Disclaimer. The information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GAN's processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute, teachings on plasma science. We're discussing advanced transmutation, and this is the world of color. We're going to talk about something we all talked about when we were children. So let's go back in time. My name is Alexander. I am from Canada. It is December the 8th, 2024. And this is part of the Keshe Foundation North America Plasma Education Series. And as we said, we're part of the advanced transmutation, and I thank you all for being patient, because we've had over 6,000 hours of teaching, both on the public and private channels. And how do we keep up with it? Even as mature students, we're having trouble. And the new students, they may get discouraged. So we try and streamline things a little bit, and try and break it down into small bits so that everyone can take from it what they know, add to it, or interpret it, or work with it to introduce others to it. But let's remember that these are all a springboard for getting us going into other areas, because we're still on the hesitancy highway, and we have to understand that that's the lowest energy state. And we like to sweep things under the carpet, right? Out of sight, out of mind. Well, there's nothing to sweep under the carpet, unfortunately. And we always have trouble with sequences, because we don't want to put the cart before the horse. And so here we are. We're going to go from cartwheels to color wheels, and just have a little fun. And it might seem like it's a little different from what we've been talking about, and maybe they might think it's not important. But 34 years ago, I asked this question: if I wanted to search for outer space, how do I ride the color wheels to the plasma highway, to our little pie in the sky? And our little pie in the sky seems to be quite red, not the blue planet that we talk about, but actually we have many, many colors. Just go to the hardware store and blend some paint. And we're going to blend some paint today, because we have a pie chart of prejudice. And the reason for this discussion is because the speed of light limits transmission. And the speed of light has variable transition. And so this creates a bit of a conflict, because we're limited on one hand, and yet we are variable on the other hand. And so really the question is, are we disconnected from the source? And when we look at the source and we say, like, where exactly is that? And if we see many things that are light years away, maybe the source is light years away, maybe the universe is light years away. While we ponder this, we'd like to have, another piece of the pie. No, never mind. We'll just have the whole pie. Okay, let's go for the whole pie, and let's make it a very colorful pie, shall we? Because historically speaking, we seem to have this reference to the zodiac, and the zodiac itself is kind of a round pie, and it has 12 pieces on this pie. Interestingly enough, each pie is only 30 degrees, and there are 360 degrees in a circle. So 12 times 30 is 360. So we've got the whole pie. And these colors are very pretty, and they're different shades. And so we need to discuss this today because when we look at book number one, the universal order of creation, and it's the creation of matter. And when we look at the matter state and we see all of these colors, it looks like a rainbow of colors, but then there's dark matter and then there's antimatter, and they have strange colors. Well, the dark matter, of course, is very dark, and the antimatter, well, what color is it? And maybe it's gold. And then we find that in book number two, the structure of the light, and there we are. There's the conundrum, the structure of the light. How do we latch on to this light so that we can build it? And obviously, if it's going from one place to another, there has to be a containment. Well, how do you contain it? And how does it decide where it goes from? And how does it decide where it goes to? And oh, so many questions. And, here we are in our short lives. We never ask the ultimate question, what's the origin of the universe? And so on the cover of book number three, we see how one field becomes two fields. And ours is that little tiny pie, and our sister universe is a lot bigger pie. How come we get the small pie? And not only that, but look how colorful our pie is. Well, what's interesting is the sister universe seems to also be kind of colorful, but ours is kind of dark, and our sister universe seems to be kind of, well, white. So for 355 weeks, Rick Crammon and the Universal Council have been trying to bring together one planet, one nation, one race for justice and world peace. Because, if you are a soccer fan and your team, Botafogo, just won the Copa Libertarias in South America, and you go into outer space and they ask you where you're from, and you tell them you're from Botafogo, and I'll say, what universe is that from? Well, it's not from the universe. It's a place on Earth. Oh, Earth. Yeah, we know where that is. That's between Mars and Venus. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've been there many times. Really? Well, I wonder because we were brought up with 10 commandments, at least I was. I think most of us here in North America were. And yet now we understand that there might be another 14. And we wonder, well, why would there be 14 missing commandments? And I wonder if there's anything else that we're missing. And we want to get on this plasma highway and we see, well, yeah, we're missing a lot of knowledge because we're down on the lowest highway, which is the transmission highway, where we have this frequency. And we know that color has frequency, right? So, and we'll be talking about that more next week. But we want to get onto the transition highway, right? Because that's how we can get one step closer to the transmutation highway, and hopefully we're achieving that. But as we find, as we elevate our ways, we have to elevate our understanding. And so we find that our existence has to take into account three dimensions. That means it's a sphere. And so the cornerstones of our knowledge are embedded in the spheres. And where actually are these corners? Well, we have to make some relationship choices. So we find that we were talking in the basic teaching about the X, Y, and Z axis and how it reflects our position with respect to transmission. But being at the lowest energy level, we wanted to elevate to a higher energy level. So we had to go through a transition. And to do that, we had to elevate all three axes, the X, Y, and Z axis. And then from there, we could actually go to a higher energy state. And our goal was to get to the transmutation state. And we have to take all three again, X, Y, and Z axis. And so here we see the beginnings of a duality. We see a transmission and we see a transmutation. And then we see the link, the transition. And I wonder if this transition has anything to do with the light. Because when we're making these relationship choices, we're only discussing the medium. We don't know what the message is, and we don't know who's sending it, and we don't know which way it's being sent. So we have to see that when we're looking at the various dimensions and what is our position. And so if we see the basis of the universal forces that come together with transmission, transition, and transmutation, which are all representations of different energy levels, and how these forces can break up into plasma energy and a matter energy. And so the one splits up into two. And so this is what we've been discussing all along. And for some, it may have been boring, except for the fact that this is one of the things that was really driven home to me, because there's a relationship in surface to volume ratios, and it has to do with energy transfer. So fundamentally, we said 1 and 1 is greater than 2. And so the 1 and the 1 are the feeding dimensions, but we're not saying necessarily, we just assume that the 1 and the 1 are the same one, but they're not the same one. They could be different. And then when you have the feedback dimension, it doesn't exclude itself from the feeding dimensions. So in other words, it has a role to play with the feeding dimensions. So the feeding dimensions have a duality where they're feeding and giving the feedback. So in terms of the feeding, 1 and 1 is feeding, but in terms of feedback, well, 1 and 1 is greater than 2 is the feedback. And there we are, we're watching this whole thing, and we try and understand mathematically pi, which is 3.14 and a bit and a bit and a bit. Well, we'll just fudge the rest. And so we find that we're actually none of these three dimensions because we're the observer. You can't be in the dimension if you're observing that dimension. And you can't be in that dimension and extricate yourself from that dimension to go into the observer dimension. You can't be like a cork in a wine bottle where you just pop the cork and you say, okay, well, I'm out of here, and we'll leave the bottle and the wine behind. Well, this is the thing about the creation of the universe. It exists from energy. And so energy has a charge. It's when it's in motion, and that tells you which way it's going, because the energy is always in motion, and the energy itself is always positive. And so all things are working in combination, which means in order to create the universal order of creation of matters, we have to bring these three energies together. But they're not of the same energy strength. So we can bring the energies together in the matter state. We can bring it in the dark matter state. We can bring it together in the antimatter state. And then we can mix things up. And for a lot of people, that's very confusing. So when we're talking about equality, and this is a very, very important word because some people think they're more equal than others, but equality has to do with the laws of conservation. So when we look at the science of physics, we're discussing matter state. And when we discuss the science of spirituality, we're discussing the plasma state, except for the small matter that they don't understand the plasma state. But that's that's a splitting hairs there. So what we talk about in the plasma state, of course, is the magnetical and gravitational field forces. And everybody's looking for this unified field theory. So when we're discussing magnetical and gravitational field forces, that is the unified field theory. And every theory remains a theory until it's disproven, and that has never been disproven. Let's look at this 1 and 1 is greater than 2. Let's look at a tractor trailer, right? There's lots of them on the highway. And so if we take the tractor as 1, and we take the trailer as 1, not the same one, and we kind of put them together, and so that togetherness is the 2 of them, but it's not the 2 of them, it's the 2 together of each one individually. And so we find that maybe the tractor's a little bit bigger than the trailer. And then when we put the tractor and the trailer together, that's even bigger. And this needs to be noticed because we're talking about equality here. But let's examine duality. Let's take a single trailer plus another single trailer, right? These 2 trailers are equal. And when we put them together in a pup trailer configuration, now you've got 2. But these 2 act as 1. So 1 and 1 equals 1? No, something wrong with that. Let's look at the synergy. Let's see what happens if we take a tractor trailer, which is 1, and it's a bigger one, and we add another trailer, that's a smaller one, and put it together, and what does that equal? And we find that that equals more than both. And so we see 3 components, but they act as 1. Do we still say that 1 and 1 is 1? Or when you look at that and you say, oh, look at the 3 components of that tractor trailer. And so what happens here? The energy input into that tractor trailer, instead of just driving by itself, instead of just having 1 trailer, it can have 2 trailers. And as it drags another trailer, it'll consume more fuel. But there's a gain. There's a systemic gain. Because the 1 trailer with the 1 driver can now do 3 things. A tractor and 2 trailers. And that's called synergy. And why do I show this very simplistic diagram? Because it's to show how the matter state science is actually applied in practicality. And so, if you're a truck dispatcher, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure out the efficiencies. But the thing is, in the plasma science, we have to do things opposite. We see the higher strength feeds the weaker strength. And so from our point of view, that becomes a conflict point. But in the scientific community, that becomes the binding zone. Well, how do we bring that together? And so we have to convert that point of conflict to conflict resolution. And within that resolution, there has to be a point of containment because you've got these two coming together. So we see this energy binding, and it's a self-serving energy binding. That's very important, except that too many of us are doing it at the expense of others. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that is they depend on this energy binding for their own self-serving needs. And so they're not willing to share that with you. Well, we can eat. And then the question becomes, what do we eat and how much do we eat? And if what we eat is sentient, then are we eating that at its expense? Or is it there for our benefit? Is it there to elevate our energy binding needs? And so that becomes the question. When we do this energy binding, are we doing it exclusively for our self-serving needs? Or are we doing this on behalf of the universe? Wow. That's, when I asked that question, that was a big question. But I didn't ask that question. I asked a little question. I just wanted my little tiny perfect world. And someone said, well, if you want to know about your little tiny perfect world, you have to understand how the universe works. And so in our tiny perfect world, we were introduced to the cups of life. And so these cups of life are showing how we can, with matter, physical matter, bring something in combination with our emotional strength, which is a manifestation of our inner space. And we do this via nanocoding process. And we created GANs. So we talk about that all the time because we have to emphasize that these cups of life were not the cups of the pandemic. They were brought to the fore because it was urgent. Why was it so urgent when the earth is such a bountiful place? And so it was a benefit to us that we understood that one cup was the emotional cup and one cup was the physical cup. And when we put the two cups together, they became the cup of man. Who? Yeah, you. That became our cup of life. And in that cup, it was a bountiful cup. And there's all sorts of radiance manifestation. So many ganses we were able to produce. Everything from carbon dioxide to calcium, copper, zinc, water, amino acid. In fact, if we really got good, we could produce gold. And in fact, the Earth is really good because the Earth space has a lot of details. And we put these details on the periodic table of elements. But these elements are specific to Earth. And so the Earth is kind of prejudiced. And so what's nice about this table is it's in color. And I wonder if the Earth has a color preference. But the Earth provides all of this, and it all comes in different colors. So it's these colors that the Earth is prejudiced. And these colors represent all of the elements on Earth. So the Earth space is prejudiced for its binding energies. And all of these binding energies come together. And we see, in addition to the cups of life that we produce, the Keshe Foundation can produce all sorts of earth ganses. And as you can see, they come in many different colors. And white is a color, and we can see that it comes in different shades. Okay, so there's shades and there's colors. Okay, well, now we understand a little bit better about how we do this plasmagen conversion. Because in the beginning, there was principal matter, which were these PM ticks, which were magnetical, and they came to Earth, and then they were converted through the amalgamation of the antimatter, dark matter, and matter gen. It converged together and created this maggrav condition, which we called Earth. And it created all of the different elements. And so all of these different elements were manifest through the field interaction of the magnetic and gravitational field forces. And in the plasma science, we call that inertia. So what we had to understand that the manifestation of inertia on this planet is what's called matter plasma. So the matter part of the matter plasma is physical, and the plasma part of the matter plasma is plasmatic. And of course, the physical, you can touch it and see it, but the plasmatic, you can't touch it and you can't see it. And because we depend on our life on what we can see and touch, then we are feedback dominant. So when we're looking at a matter state and we see how things are all connected, and we say, okay, well, one connects to the other. And we could say, well, because these things do connect, that's an affirmation of life. But are these the only things that we see connected? Because if that's true, then we're actually denying life because we limit ourselves. So what are we trying to say when we're looking at this matter state? We take fields, one field and another field, and we blend them together. One particular discussion comes up with a black hole. Another particular discussion comes with a combination where you get two fields that are similar, not necessarily the same, but one and one, and it creates more than two. And that combination comes together and creates a point of containment. And within that combination, we can now do a further combination. But we need something to combine with. And, you know, we've already combined, so you can't combine with yourself. So when we were kids, do you remember? We were taught about painting. And we looked at three basic colors, red, yellow, and blue. And what was very interesting about that, do you remember? We did some finger painting. We took the yellow and we messed it around with blue, and we got green. Or we took the yellow and messed it around with red, and we got orange. Or we created computer monitors and we called them black. And then it was white printing on black. Then we created white monitors, whereas black printing on white. And then we created color monitors, and we called them RGB monitors. What? Red, green, and blue. And somehow when you combine red, green, and blue, you get white. How does that work? Let's go back to our finger painting, shall we? Let's do the RGB color. Let's see what happens. Oh my. Well, when we mix the red and the green, we get this kind of purpley color. And then when we mix the red and the blue, well, we get this kind of purpley color. And then when we mix the green and the blue, we get this kind of greenish blue color. How does that happen? Seem to be some colors missing here. Well, let's put all these three colors together. So if we look at the RGB, in the bottom left, well, we get a really dark blue color. So this is where we take the red and the green and add it to the blue. And then we look at the bottom right-hand corner, we add the green and the blue and add the red, and comes a little bit more purple. And then we look at the middle where we take the red and the blue and add it to the green. Yeah, it kind of looks like a really dark green. And then, well, what happened to our yellow? Remember the finger painting that we were doing? So if we took the yellow and red, which created the orange, and add that to the blue, well, kind of got a really dark blue color. And if we, on the top right, add the yellow to the blue, which created that green color, and added that to the red, well, we got that kind of chocolatey color. There's some colors missing. Every time we blend these colors together, it always comes out these really dark shades, some purple, some blue, like where's the rest of the colors? The way we were doing the finger painting and the way we were doing the RGB monitors, I'm not getting all this world of color. Here, look at all these colors. When we mix these colors together, we didn't get these colors. What happened? Well, let's check it out. Let's bring them all together. So we bring the red and the orange together. We got a kind of a shiny red. Brought the orange and yellow together. We got a kind of a shiny orange. Yellow and green. Well, we got a kind of a lighter green. And the green and the blue, well, we got a darker green. And then we got the light blue with the dark blue. Well, we got a really dark blue. And then we brought the dark blue with the red, and we got No, with the purple. We got the dark blue with the purple, and we got an even darker blue. And then we brought the purple together with the red and got a really dark red. And then when we bring them all together, we got a brown, a dark brown. So whether we did it the way we were doing finger painting, or whether we brought it together with an RGB monitor, or whether we brought all these colors together, we didn't seem to get black, and we definitely didn't get white. And the combination somehow did not work. And so this answers a serious question. Are we in the matter state, or are we in the plasma state? And this is a practical answer. This is clearly matter state, because let's face it, everything around us is in colors. So when we look at the conservation of the maggrav energy transfer states, we see that we can go from the atomic state to the monatomic state to the Gantt state, but we have laws of conservation, where on the one side has to be equal to the other side. So we can be equal on one energy state, or we can be equal between energy states, or we can be equal between the physical matter state and the plasmatic matter state, or we can be equal in one physical state, take your pick, then another physical state, take your pick, or we could be equal in one plasmatic state, take your pick, and another plasmatic state and take your pick and still be equal. We have to understand this, because all things in combination. We have a conformation, a gravitational conformation of hydrogen. When the hydrogen comes from the emission spectrum of the sun, which is magnetical, and the emission spectrum of the earth, which is magnetical, and the emission spectrum of the universe, which is magnetical, and they all come together and they blend together, look at the emission spectrum. It's unique. It's like a fingerprint, and it's well organized. Oh, oxygen is the same thing, well organized, but it has a unique fingerprint, a different emission spectrum, but it's still a gravitational confirmation of a magnetical convergence of the energies of the sun, the earth, and the universe. And so the hydrogen and the oxygen become part of the prejudice of the prejudicial viewpoint of the earth. And so now we understand that the transmission spectrum, that point of containment, is just a little tiny place. That point of containment where we see the visible color. And so we see that the surface superficiality is representative of our physicality. Isn't that what we did? We put the paint on a surface, and that was the physicality. But we didn't see the internal substance, the plasma substrate. And so when we talk about the frequency of the color of light, and then we go one step beyond into the ultraviolet and the infrared, and it has no color. It's black. So still no white. And yet, when we have an RGB monitor, there is a white color. So somehow, some way, the energy is coming from one step beyond. This we have to understand. That is part of our practical manifestation. You only believe what you see. You only believe what you touch. And ignore what you can't see and what you can't touch. Are you kidding? So each one of us is an independent plasmatic variable. So the law of conservation becomes the conservation of susceptibility, where you have the magnetical susceptibility on one side and the gravitational susceptibility on the other side. And the balance between the two is a maggrav. But is it smack dab in the middle? Is that balance in the middle? Because where is the middle? Is the middle in the physical state, or is the middle in the plasmatic state? Or is the middle somewhere else? If the middle was always in the middle, then you wouldn't be able to move, would you? Because you'd always be equidistant. But we're not equidistant, but we are equal. So we can go from the maggrav atomic state to the monatomic nanostate to the polyatomic GaN state and to the field state of the plasma state. The rules are all the same. And how far can we go? I don't know. How big is large? How high is up? There's always one step beyond, isn't there? And so there's a range. Our range is between the plasmatic matter state and the Coulomb barrier. And we grudgingly accept that, except for one small problem. At the Sanya conference in China, we demonstrated to the world that we can produce gold. And if we can produce gold, and where did the gold come from? The earth produced gold. So we have a gravitational confirmation that the way that the earth produced the gold and the way that we produce the gold in the Keshe Foundation, looks the same. So when we talk about choices, we have to look at the path choice. We talk about the path, link, and susceptibility. So the emission of attention, if we're looking at what we're finger painting, or the emission of retention when we're looking at the beauty of the surroundings. And so we have to understand that this all interacts to create the emission of intention. So it changes our understanding. It goes beyond, and to understand that this intention has a message feeding and a feedback manifestation. So we, in fact, have to raise our antenna to tune from our point of transmission and tune to a point of transition into a higher energy state. Because you see, the selection of one force is magnetical and balanced by the force selection of another gravitational force. So this resulting selection feeds the maggrav manifestation. But this selection manifestation is predetermined. And that is because we choose the peace dome of intention. And how do you know that? Man is at war. The earth is not at war. So the emission of intention affects the standard folding deviation and leaves no room for war. When these fields are blended together and they come up with what is apparent to what we see, it doesn't tell you what is there. Because what is there is a transmutation manifestation, which is in balance with the peace dome. We came to Earth, remember? Earth was here before us. So we have to have this plasma perception balance. And we say that knowledge and wisdom can give you deeper insight, and experience will change a man's perspective. It allows us to reflect on life. And so if we look at the finger painting, that's a reflection. But if we look at color, that's an emission. And so that emission is organized. It could be art. It could be considered artistry. It involves cooperation. On the other hand, it could be just a hodgepodge of colors representing discord and maybe a manifestation of betrayal. Either way, 1 and 1 is more than 2. That is a given. But is it creation or is it decay? And that's the path choice that we have to take. So we can see that the one way to navigate the MAGRAPH pH is because the speed of rotation affects the transmutation transition zones. But another way is to see the color. And we see that ours is a blue planet because it's a combination of the hydrogen and oxygen and produces water. And although the planet is considered a blue planet, the water itself is clear. And so we understand that this transmutation is the same whether it's in micro or in macro. In other words, the rules are the same. The rules with respect to the peace pH based on field strength of the dove is as true on Earth as it is in the universal community. We have to understand that. And so our method of operating on this planet involves eating. We call it part of nutrition. It contributes to our wellness. Why is this front and center? Because our planet is not a happy place. And so for the 3 months, going from November 2024 to January 2025, we are carrying on with the transmutation training and discussing nutrition and wellness. So please join us every month. And if you're interested in learning more about the plasma science, consider joining the research team. Is it for your own education? Is it for your own edification? Is it for your own elevation? Or is it on behalf of your country? Or is it on behalf of your community? Or is it on behalf of the universe? You can pick the size of the scheme. And if you pick the greater oneness, and you find that each one of us can transcend the limitations of nuclear science and gravitate, if you will, to the plasma science. And we've been teaching for 567 Knowledge Seekers workshops. That's 567 weeks in a row. over 10 years to bring this knowledge, because this knowledge represents peace and prosperity, but not just for us. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute teachings on plasma science. So welcoming all the beautiful and colorful, may I add, knowledge seekers learning about the new selection process of the new plasma science. There's a World Peace Treaty. We need to sign it. We need to sign it with our heart, with our pen, with our soul, and with true intention. And we find out if man is a reactor of a three-dimensional transcendent universe. And as we go, we find there are no straight lines through field transmutation. And can man go into outer space without a peace dome? How can we transmute through the dimensions of history? So we see that the sphere creation combines the X, Y, and Z axis dimensions. And the color wheels make the revolutions of the physical transmission dimensions. And plasma science needs to be delivered daily via the peace dome in exchange for peace on Earth. And so welcome to the new outer space age. And that's the end of the lesson. I hope you all enjoyed the trip.
Well, that was a small meal, Alex. I thought you'd been preparing something extraordinarily large. But again, it's taking us some time to figure this all out. One of the things I noticed you said is you said we had to be in the dimension to be an observer, or is that what you said? Be in the dimension. If you were in the dimension, what did you actually say? You couldn't be an
No,
observer. You can't
well,
be in that dimension and be an observer. I
right.
disagree with that. I think if you're not in a dimension, then how could you be an observer?
Well,
This is just my
if you
thinking.
are watching a sports game and you're in the stands, you're an observer. But the players on the field are participants. However, the combination of the field and the stands is one field. And this is where the duality comes in. So if someone says to you, did you see the game? And you say, oh, you know what? I'm one better. I was a participant at the game. I witnessed it. And through my participation in the game, but my participation was as a spectator, I was influencing the outcome of the game, hopefully by rooting for my team. And of course, if my team wasn't doing well, maybe I was booing my team, hopefully to inspire them to be rewarded with my cheering by performing better. So you can maintain that duality. But as far as the players are concerned, if they tune you out, if they don't listen to you, and professional players will tell you it doesn't matter if they're playing in front of a few thousand fans or in front of 60,000 fans, they don't hear a thing. They're concentrating on the game. And that's a professional working at it. And so is that answering your question, Mark?
No, no, sorry. I think they're both participants. The fans are participants and observers. The players on the field are observing what's going on, and they're participants in the actual game. I
Yeah, but
was
I'm
thinking,
sorry, Mark.
yeah,
You're not allowed in the dressing room as a spectator.
sure, sure,
Mhm.
sure.
Okay, so you're not a participant with that team.
Well, you could say that, but I'm there in spirit, as they say.
That's correct. Thank you very much. You answered your own
Oh, yeah.
question.
Okay. No, but I was thinking when, let's say you want to go to a certain location, a certain planet, a certain destination, but you want to stay in the energy dimension because you want to observe what this group of entities, how they behave, how they interact. Is it some place you'd like to be? Well, you're there in that dimension and you're observing what's going on in that dimension. You shake your head. I don't think this feels right to me. So that's why I'm saying you have, to me, you have to be in the dimension in a way, even if you're not manifesting any physicality. You're still in that dimension on the energy level, observing what's going on. And if you decide to step down or step up, that's your choice. But to be an observer, I think you have to be in the dimension in a way. How would
Well,
you
I
observe it? It's like, go ahead.
well, I have to tell you that one of my favorite bands came to town, and I couldn't get a ticket. Now, I'd like to use the excuse that the tickets were sold out, but the truth of the matter is I couldn't afford a ticket. So what I did,
Must have been
because
Taylor
the
Swift or something.
oh no, I
Not those $2,000 tickets. Okay.
no, that's you'd have to pay me to do that. But no, this was a band that I wanted to go very badly, and they were in an open air stadium, but I couldn't see what was going on. And so I sat outside the stadium and I listened to the music. You know what? The music went right over the fence. Can you believe that? It was a great concert. And I wasn't there.
Somehow you were connected, though.
Well, that's my point. That's the whole point of today's discussion. Okay? Because this color that you're seeing is the physical manifestation. This is the whole point.
Okay. Let's see if anyone else has a question or a thought they'd like you to comment on, or just to make a statement themselves the way they feel. As we know, there's no peer review here in the Kesh Foundation. I was thinking when you were mentioning the mixing the colors together, it triggered when he said about the Cup of Life one. Don't just make one cup of life one. What did he say? Make four or five and mix them all together for a wider coverage or a wider spectrum of fields, which I think we remember. We all remember that. Now, I was thinking if you were to take the CUO cup, which again is one of the more powerful, let's say, antibiotics we can make ourselves, would you consider mixing cups of copper together and creating an even wider bandwidth of fields to encompass more? The way he said to do that with the cup of life one. Don't just make one, make five, mix them together, and you'll cover a broader spectrum. Would that apply to CUO as well?
A direct answer to your question, Mark, is that it would apply to every single GANs.
Okay. And when you say polyatomic, I thought our GANs is a monoatomic. You're talking about when you mix GANSes together, you get a
Oh,
polyatomic?
no,
No?
no, no. GANs is um, connected to either um, hydrogen or oxygen, right? It's CO2 GANs, CuO GANs, ZNO GANs, CH3 GaNs. So it's polyatomic. In the matter state, we call that a molecule.
Hello, can I say something?
Oh, hi. Yes, by the way, go ahead.
We're looking forward to
Yeah.
interactions. Thank you, Fo.
Okay, just you need to remember, GaNs don't mix. They exchange energy on the level of the Coulomb barrier. So even if you have carbon 12 or carbon 13, in a way they are stable, but still they exchange on the physical matter level their energies. Carbon 14 also exchange energy on the Coulomb barrier, but the energy stays inside because of the number of neutrons. When one neutron releases energy, the other neutron will pick up and balance the system out. So that's why the carbon 14 is always on the level of the principal matter and not on the level of the carbon 12 or 13. But they can, carbon 13 is a stable, so it can exchange energies on the level of the extra neutron in the carbon 13. They all exist from 6 protons and electrons, but the number of neutrons are different. Carbon 12 is 6 neutrons, carbon 13 is 7 neutrons, carbon 14 is 8 neutrons. And that's the point when I say when the inhalation of the lungs in proximity of the sodium and the pressure, the gravitational pressure, releases helium. But helium are 2 deuterium atoms. So you can create or 2 extra neutrons for the carbon 14, and you release the proton and electron for the physical part, or you can create 2 deuterium atoms, and it will create 2 carbon 13. And that is, that's how the physicality commutes to the carbon 14. And that's why the carbon 14 is at the level that it can even exchange energies inside itself, like in fact like the sun. The field of the sun, when it releases one, let's say one Mach ray, the other neutron will pick up the energy of that Mach ray and it becomes stronger, so it releases energy again. And then the other part that first releases the energy will pick up the energy again and it balances out. That's conservation of energy. See this, so if there are any remains, like a sun send out rays in the universe on the level of the nitrogen, that can turn into physical matter. And not plasmatic matter, but on the end, there's always a heliosphere and there's always interaction with electrons. Do you understand? I hope I make myself clear.
It's a very good point, Fo, and thank you so much. There is one other thing that I would like to add to that, though, and that is that when you're looking at the 12 and the 14 and the carbon, you're looking at a symmetry. And when you're looking at the 13 and 15, you're looking at asymmetry. And so...
But 15 isn't not stable. It goes to the oxygen.
Yeah, well, none of them are stable above 12. And that's what's...
Carbon 13 is, in a way, more stable than it has to transfer energy because of the extra neutron.
Right.
But it's the energy, it's not that much that it releases. So it's very stable in respect to the carbon 15.
That's
carbon
correct.
15 is really unstable. It's like a tritium. It needs to get rid of the excess energy, or it must pick up extra energy, and then it becomes helium-3 and or helium-4. Still on the physical matter, the lower matter state. When you reach the balance or an overproduction of neutrons, like 2, it always tries to pick up the same energy from one neutron to the other neutron. It's like, how do you call it? It's like a pyramid. Normally, when we talk about a star formation, that is a pyramid. It's like 2 neutrons, and on one side there's a proton, and on the other side is an electron, and it switches places all the time. It's the only way that a tritium can be, in one kind of way, be stable. But at the end, it must release energy. So I told many times, look at the neutron part, and in the neutron there are energies of motion or emotion, as you say, and because the neutron, when you see carbon 14, it's like a carbon 12 with an extra layer on the outside, and now it had 2 extra layers. So these atmospheric layers from the atom exchange energies, but it's also collects energies from the outside. See, that's the difference between a neutron and a proton or electron. I think I have to stop.
Good job. Excellent. Thank you.
And there must be much more knowledge. When he referred to teaching 5,660, I just did a quick calculation. That's another century of teaching. So there must be quite a bit more knowledge. Again, maybe he was just making some sort of point. I think he was talking about, the emotion into the computer with the chip. I think it's going to happen. But if there was 5,000, that's another 100 years in the future. So there must be
Mark,
quite a bit
I
of knowledge.
comment on that.
Oh, please.
Well, I think I've been around on the Keshe Foundation information about from 2009. That was when they made the first website, and further in the past, I saw the small patents on Rex research, and
Right.
that
Yeah.
caught my attention. So
Yeah, because in the recent past, he said maybe we're going to go to 1,000 teachings or something like that. That was another reference he made a few months ago or a number of weeks ago. Again, maybe we'll go to 1,000 teachings, but 5,000 would take us into another century.
no, yes, I don't know everything, but the basic principles I know. So in a way, it's easy. On the other way, it's very hard because of the how do you call it? The part of the emotional energies. When you see that kind of thing happens, you can't put a number on it. You know what's gonna happen, and you know what the effects are, but you sometimes you just can't interfere. Just like as you said from the horseman. Let's say that I know him personally also, but that's not. I don't want to say his name.
No problem, don't.
He was with the KAKT Foundation several times, and his daughter is mentioned a lot in the past by Kashi.
So is it just horses he has a fondness for, or can he sort of relate to other? I know in the United States we had the dog whisperer. That was a famous Caesar.
In a way, he's a physical therapist for horses, but he's also a horse whisperer.
Right, right. So he's able to connect on that communication line and maybe understand what the issue is with the horse, whether it's physical or whether it's emotional.
Yes. Yeah, that's he can first when he does the treatment. Most of all, he does first look at the body of the horse. What is the problem? And then he tries to connect with the horse on a spiritual level. And it's he's really good in it.
He must be successful if they're flying him in. These Arabian horses are no glue factory or something, right? They're in the millions or even more, I understand, hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars.
I don't know which horses he treated, but he's in a way he's very humble.
Another key, yes.
Yeah, it's yes, he's really connecting with the horses, just like some people can do with dogs or cats or whatever.
Right,
but he is really into horses.
Right, and you would think that, wow, they must have been born with a special capability that none of us have or the rest of us don't have. But that's not the case at all, is it? We can do the exact same thing. We have to train for it. We have to practice.
In a way we can, because I know his daughter wanted to play the harp. And Kesh also told...
Is that the one? Is that the daughter that Mr. Kesh refers to often that grew the arms?
Yes. You could say it's in the family, but it's also from, how can you say it, soul power.
For sure. And she's got a good example of her father. So she's got a lot of trust and confidence in herself that it can be done. And quickly, the story is the young lady wanted to play the harp, but that instrument was a little bit too large for her if you
Yeah.
have the big harp. And so, through her emotions, we heard from Mr. Kesh that she actually lengthened her arms to be able to fully engage with the harp and play it.
Yes, and that's why emotions and the power of the soul can do many things, like the Father can, well, let's say, speak with horses or communicate with horses. And she just wanted to play the harp, and she really can. Sorry, but I'm not much into music because of my deafness, but she really can.
Right, and remember what we was mentioned that when we used to be able to grow our own tail when we had a tail. So just the way the lizard does it, again, this is not anything. It's just we've not used that energy or whatever it is to emotion to make that happen. So we used to be able to grow our own tail the same way the lizard if he gets his tail bitten off. So as he said, we haven't even reached the understanding of the lizard yet.
Yeah, but if you want to grow wings, you don't need them.
Agree.
It's not practical in the universe. As a bird, it's very practical, but in the universe, it's not.
Yeah, won't work. The bird will disintegrate, so to speak. Anyone else want to add a question or a comment or whatever you'd like to bring? If the soul is impressing upon you to share something, I would share it. Even though you may think it's not relevant or it's not correct what you're saying, allow the soul to work through. It may be trying to reach someone else, or it may connect in the future time. Anyone else? So the what you were saying about rotation and transmutation, Alex, could you go back to that slide and maybe just reiterate again or repeat what you conveyed? You say if we don't, it's the speed of rotation. And maybe I missed that. You were saying something about if we're the speed of rotation, what? Delivers or defines the transmutation? Maybe you want to just take a few minutes and go over that again. Again, I'm not sure if I agree with that rotation. I think we're already rotating. Every atom has its own black hole, so it must be rotating. Every plasma has its own black hole. It must be rotating. I'm sure the soul is also rotating as a black hole. So what do you mean the speed of rotation?
Well, it's in a way, it's not the speed of the rotation, it's the speed of the interaction between these two neutron fields on the outside. So if it's in its environment loses too much energy, it will turn back and becomes like a certain emotion. When it comes back, it becomes an emotional virus. So if that extra energy will go in because of the interactions between the outer layers, yeah, it can convert into an emotion that you don't want. Or it's too high sometimes energy, and It can create all kinds of things. On
Yeah,
the other hand,
yeah.
when you have too low soul energy, it can help you.
Yeah, this is what I've been trying to understand, how you create a strength of a field and keep it in a certain position. Like if you were making a craft and you needed reactors, you need that field to stay in that position at a certain strength, or maybe the strength changes as you move different things. But I'm not at the level of understanding how you create a field at a certain strength.
What happens to parents when a child is born?
Say what?
Say what happens to parents when a child is born?
They become children.
Yeah, but they are happy. So they bring in positive energy. But what happens when your grandfather dies? It depends on how close you were to that man or woman or whatever it was. That's a negative energy, and that robs some of the emotion. So it can create problems again, because in a way, emotions of sadness, when it wants to talk out in the physical state to balance the soul, but to turn that to the physical state, so that you can cry or laugh about it, or it all depends. But it can, oh boy, how do you say it? I must be careful, because doctors won't take it as an example, but it can create all kinds of problems in the body. And it's just remember what that does things do. I know what it is to lose a child, and that has created for me and my wife lots of negative emotions. Let's say that's it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. How to create a field at a certain strength, which I'm not sure how I would determine that strength, and to keep that field in a certain position.
And now I come to the following point, and I hope
Okay.
Keshe doesn't mind. When it happens with the 129 in 2014, Keshe asks me, what do you wish? Well, at that time, I was happy. Everybody was healthy. I just had my first granddaughter. So I didn't have a real wish, but the only wish I had, I was looking at the cash reactor. Okay, we wanted to grow stronger, so take what you need. Then it happens on, I don't know why, but it happens, the 129. For me, I was a bit surprised, because it happens that my daughter, my little girl, came from behind and said to me, I clearly heard it, it's okay. And then in a flash of a moment, I saw a young, how do you say that? A young, full-grown girl, lady. At that time, she would have been 27. And that's what I saw. She manifested herself through my soul. And you can imagine what that was for me and how much energy it's created. So for me, that was a positive energy. But in case you want to talk about 129 in a different way, so but it doesn't matter to me how he does it, but it happened, and that's exactly what I know what a positive energy can do. For me, that memory was a negative energy, and then it turns into a positive energy.
And how many millions or billions of dollars did you, or euros did you spend to create the 129?
What say?
I said in most tests, a lot of these scientists spend millions or a lot of money to be able to create the high magnetic field. And the test you were in, did you spend millions or billions of dollars to create that 129?
Yeah, but it's I don't know. But let's say my wife became sick in 2015. And I know which emotion caused it. Then in 2016, I made the patches and I made the reactor. The first session with the doctors and the radiation therapy, they couldn't believe what they saw because the results were so yeah, in a way I got lucky because when my wife got sick and they had MRI and that sort of things, they say she had only 3 months to live. Well, in the end, she died, but it was 5 years later. So, yeah, that's not a happy occasion, but it's 5 years. Keshe also said sometimes people just, if they have the millions, they want to live another year. Well, my wife lived another 5 years. So, do I complain? No. Is it sad? Did I have certainly difficult years? Yes. But and in fact, I know what happens the second time I was confronted with my MS. It was the week of her birthday after she died. So that's what emotions can do. And also I know what happens in 2014, and I know what that kind of emotions can do. So I only know what let's say if you want testimony, that's my testimony.
Thank you for sharing your personal stories with us. We appreciate that. That's touching. Yes.
Yeah, I have to take in regard of who or what it is. So let's say from the horseman, I know his name. I don't tell you. He has the right to his own privacy, and also the daughter.
Of course.
That's what I learned also from my wife. Cashier really wanted her testimonial, but she said no one has to know. It's my emotion, and I have to respect that. That's not only my wife, but also other people that we talk about. If they don't say it, that's their choice. So I hope you all think about it when you make choices.
Thank you, Fo. Alex, you have your mic open. Is there something you wanted to share?
I want to thank you, Fo, for sharing that experience. It's most enlightening.
I was going to say, I think you and Fo can compare notes at one point in time.
Oh, I know. Well, I mean, that's what brought me on this path 34 years ago. So, when I discovered a cure for cancer, and then people telling me, well, if there was a cure for cancer, then everybody would know about it. And then I learned about the reality of the situation. But the thing that was a real problem back then was that we didn't have the correct knowledge, and that was something that I am grateful that I picked up, and I know Mr. Kesh criticized me on that, but it wasn't a put down. It was a push up, if you will, to understand the difference between the physicality and the plasma reality. And what was difficult for me, of course, is that I was denied access to that knowledge. So I had to kind of navigate into that knowledge based on what I knew and compare it to what I was learning. And the most important thing for me was to see if the theories were correct. And as I say, a theory is a theory as long as it's never disproven, and it only has to be disproven once. And when people ask you to prove it, well, it's not up to me to prove it. Everybody has to, prove it to themselves. So what I did, of course, was, and you asked me about rotation, when I created the GANs, and then all of a sudden I had a hole in the GANs. And that was confirmed by another knowledge seeker out of Brazil. And I thought, well, I'm in North America. I'm in Canada, and they're down in Brazil, and we have the same result. How does that happen? Is there a connection? But the most important thing was that, and I had this discussion with a person, and again, this has to do with rotation, was because that rotating field created an alkaline state, and it changed the pH of the water. And I said, well, how can you change the pH of the water without chemicals or without electrolysis? And if you created the pH of the water, and if you're creating that water to be a pH on one side, and you're raising its alkalinity, which means it's absorbing energy, where's that energy coming from? And then how do you balance that off? And this becomes a question. And, I made that reactor in 2017, and here we are in 2024, really trying to answer those questions. And, we've got to keep working at it, because right now we don't have the momentum. Well, when I say we don't have the momentum, we haven't crossed the threshold there where we have enough people to ask these questions. Too many people are actually deciding not to ask the question. They come, to that T intersection, and they're given a choice. Well, you can go left or you can go right, and then they say, "Well, why can't I go straight?" And say, "Well, because the choice is left or right." And then I say, "Well, is that the only choice that I have? And who's making that decision? And how come I'm not involved?" And so we go through life, basically denying our ability to make these decisions. And you say, "Well, I'm not a rocket scientist." Okay, well, that's fine. But, you know, whether it's a job that you have, or whether it's a school you went to, whether it's a friend you had, or whether it's a spouse, we all make choices, and some are good, and some are bad. The good part about all of these choices is that they teach you how things work. So that means even the bad choice teaches you. So the point is you can't discount the bad. The only thing that you need to do is you need to learn so that you don't have to go through that path. That path is already ingrained in our RNA. That path is already ingrained in our roadmap, because you can only produce that roadmap if you've gone down that path. If you haven't gone down that path, then where does that roadmap come from? And all you have to do is ask yourself the question, you think it's hard to convince someone about the plasma science. Let's work exclusively in physicality. You're Christopher Columbus, and you need money to get some ships and get some sailors, and you need to go across the Atlantic and find the path to India. And you need the money to do that. So two questions come to mind. What prompted him to do something so outrageous? And how did you convince whoever had the finances to finance you that there was merit in your quest? I mean, either you're a nut bar, or the person that you convinced is a total idiot. It was easy for the sailors because they were all prisoners. So, this is your freedom ticket. And then he comes to India and he discovers India. What he discovered was all the people who discovered it before him. Now think about the decision that he had to make, and think about the convincing that he had to do. And for 500 and change Knowledge Seekers workshops, we've been teaching this. FO's been around the foundation since 2009. I've been since 2015. And some of us are, just came this year. But the battle is always the same. How do you accept the new technology, and how do you teach that new technology, especially when you don't have the extreme education? And, you know, I had a discussion with someone who was what I call Christopher Columbus. Oh, I discovered all the benefits of eating healthy. What now? Now you discovered it? How old are you? You know, and then I, you know, they're in their golden years. So they have a retirement fund. They have all the things that they need, and they're enjoying their golden years. And they're saying, well, now I'm making critical choices to improve my health. And I just always say to them the one thing: you don't have enough money to eat healthy, because there's no store in town that has what you need. So you can pontificate how much you want and say, oh, I'm making choices, I'm making dietary choices, I'm eating organic this, or I'm vegan that. And yeah, really. And you're shopping in the same stores that we shop in. You're buying the same groceries that we're all buying. Oh, I go to the farmer. Well, the farmer is growing the crops in the same environment that we live in. The produce is living in the same environment that we're living in. So I'm happy that you're financially comfortable, but you can't do what you need to do in the environment that we have, because you're depending on physicality. So what we need to understand is the plasma reality. And I had this discussion with the doctor. He gave me drugs. He says, I have to take drugs for the rest of my life. I said, did I get sick because I failed to take your drugs? I said, I had a doctor gave me 6 months to live. And I said, well, I didn't take drugs for 35 years. Now I have to take drugs for the rest of my life. And how long will the rest of my life be? Well, he says, it'll only be about 6 months. So I was thinking, well, 36, 37, so 35 years I was healthy, and then 1 year I was sick, and that's the rest of my life. So I think something allowed me to be healthy when I was younger. And let's say it wasn't a doctor because I wasn't taking the drugs. So let's say, for discussion purposes, that it was God. And so suddenly, for me, at the age of 35, God got stupid. And he says, well, that's it. Whatever I'm giving you to be healthy, that's it. It's the end of the road. Now you got to go to a doctor and get the drugs to keep you healthy. And so that was the question I asked the doctor, did I get sick because I failed to take your drugs? And his answer was very, very critical. No, that's not why you got sick. Oh, well, okay, please tell me why I got sick. And then he gave the answer, that magical answer that the physics professor gives you, that the politician gives you, the doctor gives you. A lot of people give you this answer. I don't know. That's okay. I want to, learn how to use say, a radial arm saw. Mark, can you teach me how to use a radial arm saw? Oh, sorry, Alex. I don't know. Okay, well, that's fine. All right, so I won't use a radial arm saw today. Maybe is, you know what, Alex? If you want me to sharpen skates, I can teach you how to do that. You want to cut wood, forget about it. You got to talk to someone else. So I go to someone else and say, oh, I'm going to go to Mr. Transmission. Oh, I have a problem with my tires. Sure thing. We're going to change your transmission. Well, there's nothing wrong with my transmission. Well, we don't know how to change tires. We change transmissions. That's what we do. So we start to realize that it's like you said, we have all of these things that we have to take into account. And we see that in our career choices. Like someone would say, I worked for a company for 30, 40 years. Basically, the entire working life. And then you see others who've maybe had 30, 40 different jobs in their life. So if you were to ask me at the age of 35, would I be teaching at the Kesh Foundation at my age? I'd say, what? How is that possible? I'm having trouble just staying alive. And then I found out what everybody wanted. They wanted, optimum health. And then I wanted to tell people, and then I found out the truth. That is not what they wanted. Because if they wanted it, they would have had it, but they didn't want it. So it looked like maybe I was Christopher Columbus. And now I find all these people are saying, oh, I know how to stay healthy. Do you? Well, how is that? And then you think, oh my God, I've been there, done that. Okay, we are way beyond that. And so now we found out, yes, what you eat matters. But if you think good, that matters more. That matters more. So why is that? So you have to take other things into account. And now, in many regards, we are all Christopher Columbus. But the thing is, it has been a matter of life and death. I don't need to sharpen skates or cut wood or learn how to do some of these other things. It's a matter of rating the importance. And when it comes to life and death, we have to know the rules. Because once you go the wrong path, then you have to figure it out. And so here we are. We're all making these choices. So how do we do this? Well, the first thing we have to do is create an emission of intention. What is it exactly that you want? And for a lot of people, that'll be a revelation. You mean I can make a choice? Sure. And once you make that emission of attention, then that can become your attention. And if you're good at being observant, then that can be part of your retention. And so you retain your intention. So you don't take that what you've retained and act on your emission. You emit your intention, and then your intention creates your retention. You modify your intention based on what you learned. And so now we've come to the point where we understand that what we've learned in our history, generations prior, thousands of years, is embedded in our RNA. So it's part of us. And like you said, Mark, you take a bunch of cups, all making the same GANs, and then you put them all together to blend to increase the diversity of the energy field within that particular GANs. When you bring, say, 5 people in the room, and one comes from South America, one comes from North America, one comes from Europe, one comes from Asia, and one comes from Australia, might as well bring another one in from Africa. What do you get? You get a very, very broad picture with much more detail, much more knowledge. And so the quality is much greater. So as a human race, we have now drawing the attention that we're getting from all the members on this planet. And whether they're at this meeting or whether they're talking about it openly, the souls have opened up and there's a communication. And the reason that communication is getting stronger is because the need is getting greater. So the susceptibility is getting greater because our initial intention was to come to Earth. And the reason was because that was the initial intention of Earth. And so there's a convergence. And that convergence is the retention, the physicality. That's where the physicality comes from. So the physicality is a byproduct of the intention and the attention, not the other way around. That's why we're having a trouble. We're too feedback dominant. We're matter state dominant. The Keshe Foundation has advanced beyond the matter state. Not just being a neighbor. We're totally out of that dimension. So we can go from a lower energy state of 3 dimensions, elevate into a higher state of 3 dimensions, and even go one step beyond. Thanks everybody for letting me present today. I hope you enjoyed this session. And thanks very much, Mark, for, I'm going to get off this soapbox now. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else have anything else they'd like to add? I think I'll play the Keshe Foundation Wellness Center, which we put the link to contact our doctors in the chat, and the final disclaimer, and the meeting will come to an end. Does anyone want to add anything else before we close? And thank you all for being here today. Okay, much more to understand, much more to learn, much more to apply as I see it. We're still in the basic nursery school, but that's okay. We've grown quite a bit. All of us have gained a lot of confidence and understanding, and not waiting for the final bell or the final call before we start figuring some of these things out. And as we know, which is kind of strange, he said the life starts at the point of death and not ends at the point of death. So this is, I think we've got many things backwards in so many ways. But we'll all find out more, and as we continue to move in this plasma knowledge and science. And I was thinking, Alex, it'll be, you mentioned the research groups. What an honor for scientists to be at the cutting edge of technology on this planet. rather than going home and say, honey, I'm designing a weapon that'll kill 10,000 people all at once. And even if you couldn't tell your wife about it, you have to live with it yourself. But with the research centers, with the Kesh Foundation, it's not war and destruction, but it's peace and harmony and delivering a beautiful change to humanity. So I think these top scientists, some of them may not get it or think it's just, a hoax of some sort. It can't really happen, but I think they'll gravitate towards these research centers, and I think they'll feel great about serving humanity rather than serving the other machine, let's say, of death and destruction. So let me play the Wellness Center. Again, I put the link in the chat for anyone who wants to contact the doctors at the Kesh Foundation or doctors. And then the final disclaimer and the meeting will end.
Can
Anyone
I just
else?
ask you a question, Mark?
Please.
Have you ever spoken to someone who does work like that and is unable to talk about that with the family?
Have I ever spoken to someone like that?
Yeah.
Is that what you asked?
Yes.
No, I don't know anyone in those circles that I'm aware of.
Yeah,
But it's a pretty heavy burden to have to carry with you that one of the things that you worked on in your life was to destroy others. I mean, this is what Mr. Kesh is saying, move away from that sort of ethos and come into the beautiful ethos of the universe, of
yeah,
elevation,
I know
peace,
two people,
harmony.
or
Yep.
I knew two people. I have no idea if they're still alive, but they were soldiers of fortune. Yep. It's hard. I tell you, it really, the way it affects the family life, the way, well, there is no social life. So the family has to also do without a social life in that regard. Oh, why don't you bring your husband along to the party? If I tell you he carries a big gun and he doesn't leave home without it, it is it's got to be hard. It's got to really be hard. And
Well, didn't Oppenheimer regret working on that project in the end of his life? He realized this. The same with a number of generals I was thinking in the Israeli army. I can't think of his name, Yitzhak Rabin, who was a very, very powerful general and did a lot of destruction. But at the end, he realized that peace was the only path to take. And of course, he disappeared relatively quickly after that. But again, I think they have to carry quite a heavy burden.
Well, this is it.
Yeah.
This is it, and it's a awesome price to pay, and for some of them, they really had no choice. But if you consult the soul, and you find that the soul will make that choice on your behalf, and it just demonstrates clearly how important it is for us to listen to our soul. And that was the only point. That was the only reason I brought it up. So thanks very much, Marco.
Okay.
Pass it back to you.
Okay, let me share the screen. Thank you all again for being here, being part of this beautiful project that Mr. Kesh is involved in. And again, it's taken him quite a long time to get to this point, not only in this cycle, but as he said, over the thousands of years that he's been here trying to figure out the ways of the man and how, in a way, to transfer this knowledge in its totality, I guess. So thank you all. We'll